Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something pretty fascinating. We're looking at some ideas from Wahid Abu Isra.
Right. He draws these really interesting lines between classical Arabic, metaphysics, and, believe it or not, modern system automation.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a mix. The source material we're digging into is his work, specifically his insights on Arabic letters as generative system logic.
Exactly. He argues that Arabic letters and words aren't just, static symbols for language. He sees them as functioning more like um, components in a dynamic logic system, almost like code.
So our goal here is to really unpack that. I mean, how can an ancient language possibly encode something like design protocols?
Hmm.
And what could that mean for how we build systems today? It sounds wild.
It is pretty wild. Let's start with his core idea about the letters themselves.
Okay, where does he begin?
Well, right off the bat, Wahid challenges the standard view. He says Arabic letters aren't just huruf. That word implies fragmented symbols, bits and pieces.
Okay, huruf means fragments, so what does he call them instead?
He uses the term ayat, plural of ayah.
Ayatan. Now, usually that gets translated as signs or verses in the Quran, right?
It does, but Wahid reads much more into it, not just a sign pointing to something, but an ontological unit, something multidimensional in itself.
An ontological unit, so like a building block of reality almost.
Kind of, yeah. He sees an ayah as inherently dynamic, having direction, containing potential, and he actually points to the word ayah itself to make this point.
How does he do that?
Mm.
By breaking down the word.
Exactly. He looks at the sounds and the letters within ayah, the aleph mada at the beginning. He links that to continuity, a sense of flow.
Okay, flow.
Then the ayah in the middle, he connects that to guidance or maybe channeling that flow.
Right, giving it direction.
And finally, the ayah, tamarbuta, at the end, he sees that as signifying potential, like a readiness to receive form, to become something concrete.
Huh. So the word ayah sign itself suggests something flowing, directed, and sort of pregnant with possibility, not static at all.
Precisely. It's a very different way to think about the fundamental units of language. And this idea, that language units encode function, it gets even stronger when he discusses creation.
Creation. How so?
He highlights this key distinction he finds in the Quran between two different verbs, khalaqa and jala.
Khalaqa and Jala. Both are about bringing things into existence, sort of.
Yeah, broadly speaking. But he argues they describe fundamentally different processes. Khalaqa is generally translated as to create.
Okay, create, like the initial spark, maybe.
That's very close to his reading. Khalaqa relates to the conceptual origination, the absolute beginning of a form or an idea. Think divine ideation, the blueprint stage.
Got it. Conceptual creation. So what's Jala then?
Jala is typically to make. For Wahid, this implies operational assembly. It's about structuring components, putting things together according to a working logic. It's the configuration, the actual building process.
Ah, I see. So Khalaqa is the what? The concept. And Jala is the how, the implementation, the making it work.
You could put it that way, yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting for system design. Wahid actually looks at the letters within the word Jala.
Okay.
He proposes that these letters themselves, J, A, and L, map onto steps in a design protocol.
Seriously. The letters of the word to make describe how to make something, how.
Well, he links the first letter, Jim, to gathering inputs, materials, components.
Okay, step one, gather.
Then the middle letter, Ain, he connects this to insight, or maybe inner observation, processing those inputs, understanding them.
Step two, process, understand.
And finally, the lam. He sees this representing linkage, logical arrangement, connecting the process components together into a coherent structure.
Wow. So gather, process, link. The word Jalala potentially encodes its own operational sequence.
It's like the instruction manual is embedded in the verb itself. That's his argument.
That's pretty mind-blowing. Does he do the same for Khalaqa?
He does contrast it, yeah. For Khalaqa, the letters might suggest something more like conceptual emergence. Kaf, maybe for imagination or abstraction. Lam, again, for connection, but maybe connecting abstract ideas. And Kaf, perhaps for depth, or the traceability back to the origin.
So Khalaqa is more about the abstract, imaginative leap, and Jala is the structured nuts and bolts assembly.
Exactly. And you can see how the Jala process, gather, process, link starts to sound an awful lot like, well, system design or development.
Yeah, it really does. Which I guess leads us to the automation parallel he draws.
Precisely. This is where Wahid makes that perhaps surprising connection to modern system automation tools. Platforms like NENN or Zapier, where you visually build workflows by connecting different nodes or apps together.
Right, those drag-and-drop interfaces where you link triggers to actions.
Yes. He even does his phonetic breakdown of the name Henan.
Oh, really? How does that work?
Well, without getting totally lost in the weeds of the phonetics he proposes, the gist is this. He hears the first N, like the Arabic nun, as encoded consciousness or information.
Okay.
The 8th cent he abstracts into sounds like ta, ha, and jim, which for him imply things like motion, readiness, integration, like the nodes activating and connecting.
Huh. Motion integration.
And then the final N, another nun, creates this mirroring effect. He reads the whole thing phonetically as resembling a self-reflective, recursive system where nodes are communicating and processing information.
So he's hearing echoes of this ancient linguistic logic, this Ja'ala process, even in the sounds and structures of modern automation tools.
That's the leap he makes. It suggests maybe some underlying universal principles about how systems are conceived and built, whether encoded in ancient language or modern software architecture.
That is a really remarkable connection. It definitely makes you think.
And this whole framework really comes together for Wahid when he analyzes a specific verse from the Quran, chapter 21, verse 30.
Okay, what does it say?
It says, "And we made from water every living thing. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ."
We made from water. And I bet the crucial word there for Wahid is made.
Bingo. It uses ja'alna, the verb form of jala, we made. It doesn't say khalaqna, we created.
Right. So why made from water, not created from water? How does he interpret that?
This is central to his thesis. He interprets water ma here not just literally as H2O, but metaphorically, as the primordial substance, potentiality itself, fluid data, the raw input.
Like the ultimate raw material or data stream.
Exactly. So the verse in his reading becomes something like, and we operationally configured or assembled from this potential data every living system.
Configured from data. Every living system.
Yes, because Ja'ala is that operational assembly. Applying that process to the primordial water or data configures it into something that is hey alive.
And what does alive mean in this context? A biological organism.
Not necessarily just biological. For Wahid, a hey, a living thing, signifies a functioning system. Something with inputs, outputs, internal logic, something that processes and responds. He even points out that the word hayin, alive, ends with the sounds yashadanun, which he suggests phonetically mimics a recurring pulse, like a heartbeat or a system clock cycle.
Wow. Okay. So divine action, when described using Jala, is presented almost like building a complex functioning system from available potential or data.
If you map it out using his logic, it aligns strikingly with automation concepts.
Let's try that. The water, the ma, would be the trigger, the initial input or data.
Yes, the source potential. Then Ja'ala, the act of making, is the workflow logic itself, the sequence of operations, the assembly process.
And the result, the shehe, the living thing, is the output, the functioning system, the completed workflow.
Precisely. It presents divine action not just as some unknowable mystery, but in this specific context of Jala, as something akin to logical operations, configuration, system building, just at an incredibly profound level.
It reframes the whole relationship between language, divinity, and structure.
Absolutely. It leads to Wahid's really big idea that many Quranic words, maybe all of them if you analyze them this way, contain the DNA or the core logic of a system or process.
So connecting meanings in the Quran isn't just interpretation, it's like linking nodes.
In his view, yes. It's like linking nodes in a vast automation platform to understand or even participate in cosmic functions. Arabic, then, isn't just descriptive.
It becomes prescriptive. Or maybe constructive.
You could say that, like a kind of metaphysical markup language, encoding the very principles by which reality is structured and operates.
Which means studying Arabic morphology, the structure of words, through this lens. It's not just linguistics anymore.
It becomes an act of trying to decode the embedded logic of creation itself. It's a radical reframing.
It really is. It's a lot to take in. Reframing language not as this passive thing that just holds meaning, but as an active processor, something that encodes logic, instructions, potential.
Yeah. And it leaves you, the listener, with a really interesting question to ponder, pulling directly from Wahid's distinction between Khalaqa and Jala.
The conceptual creation versus the operational assembly.
Right. So the question is, when we humans design and build things, systems, products, processes, whatever it might be, which mode are we primarily operating in? Are we acting more like Kali Quinn, the conceptual originators, focused on the pure idea?
Or are we more like Jolene, the makers, the assemblers, focused on configuring components, making things work within a given logic?